Colton, how's it going today?
Man, doing so good, man. How are you? Have you
I'm
been?
good. I'm good. It's good
Good.
to see you because the last time we talked, your twins were very little. How old are
Yeah.
they now?
Dude, they're about to be two. They're about to be
That
two.
is crazy.
I
That is
know, man.
crazy. Now, you keep a crazy tour schedule. You have a lot going on, but I have
Yeah.
to before we get into the music and, live and local and all the other cool things that are going on, what have you learned in these 2 years about life through parenting?
Oh man. I think the list is shorter if I go what haven't I learned? Um, One of the big things just as it pertains to balancing family and career is uh, learning to say no more often, even if they're cool opportunities, because I know that when I say yes to something, I'm ultimately saying no to being at home with my family. So that's something that we really pray about, we weigh, and we go, okay, like, yeah, like cool opportunities, like, but God, like, is this what we're supposed to do? It's like, it comes back to that whole thing of like not settling for good or better when you can have his best, right? So, and sometimes it means like, yeah, it seems good for me to go do this. My wife and I are on the same page. It's like, cool. I'll be back in a couple days, guys. Don't don't go off and do too many awesome things without me. I've got FOMO big time.
It's the hard
But
part though, like missing out on the fun things, right? Well,
I
especially with
know.
a schedule like yours. But that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah, it can be. At the same time, like I believe that God's given both my wife and I grace to do it, and so um, I'm going to keep doing it until I feel like it's time to stop. And my wife's on board with that as well, which is such a blessing. But yeah, like that on the career side. But um, as a dad, um, just we have twins, identical twins, and you would sometimes think that they're going to respond the same way to certain things or certain situations, and they're very different people, right? So you even have to approach them differently, or even discipline. And we're just now like on the doorstep of what that even would look like,
Well, they're
right?
about
Because
to be
they're
two, so
I
yeah,
know they're
you're
about
gonna
to be
be
two.
yeah, exactly. You're
Yeah,
about to
and
hit
and
that
they're
all that fun.
yeah, but it's just like even in the times, it's like one is more sensitive than the other, so you kind of have to, because I've even been like, oh, no, 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 we don't do that, and it's not mean, it's or whatever, it just can, to her it comes across like a lot, so she gives like, she'll do the lip and then she'll just get that fat tear, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel awful, right? You just have to learn how to navigate that, how to approach, because each person is different. And honestly, even as it pertains to us with our heavenly Father, like it just makes me wonder. It's like he probably does that with us as well, right? We're all unique people and we all respond to things differently. So I wonder if he approaches us differently, person by person. It's an interesting thought. But
That's a really because it's we have all these sayings in Christianity where like God meets you where you are, and you say these things, but it would make sense, right? Like that's actually a really introspective, interesting question of how. I mean, I would imagine there's no way he could deal with every single person the same because of how different we all are and what we need, right? Like some
right,
people
exactly.
need to see miracles. I feel like literal miracles right in front of them, like big miracles in order to
Yeah.
believe. Whereas like I don't need that necessarily. I see miracles
Yeah.
in everyday life, right? So
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's relationship, right? If it was just a blanket or a one size fits all, I think that's when it becomes religion. But the fact that it's a relationship, I think takes it to that deeper level of going, oh man, like he does meet me where I am and he does care about the little things, and my relationship with God might look different from your relationship, and vice versa. And that's okay. Right. Um, yeah, it's a really interesting thought for sure.
well, and that like this word miracles brings me back to a story that you and I have talked about in the past. Obviously, when you guys had your twins, one of your children, one of your babies, was born without a pulse. I mean, it was a really scary situation. You experienced
Yeah.
a real life miracle. And I would imagine that's something that remains with you and that you reflect on often in that parenthood journey.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so grateful for that, and for those who maybe haven't heard the story, um, Annie's pregnancy was great. She carried the twins for 38 weeks, which is a miracle in and of itself. And yeah, when little Dior came out, we had to switch to a C-section as a plan B after a certain amount of time progressed. And she came out, it was like, okay, here's the faith or fear moment. Like, she's not okay as she is right now. So God, we're believing that you're going to step in, and your plan for her life is going to come to fruition, not the enemy's plan over her life, which is to steal, kill, and destroy. But you come to give us life and life more abundant. So God, we're speaking that into Dior right now. We were full on preachers in that operating room, right? We were praying into it, and whether he reached down directly or worked through the doctors and nurses, but she's good, happy, healthy.
It's
Spent a week
amazing.
in the NICU to monitor, but she's great. But yeah, I think back on that a lot. Um, it's interesting. Like, I think all of us would say, man, like, I would love to experience a miracle. I would love to see it with my own eyes. It's like, yes, but you're also forgetting about pretty major counterpart, and that is that you would be in need of a miracle.
Right.
That's
Right.
uncomfortable, right? That's the part that's not any fun. Right? That's the part where, like, Moses is leading the Israelites and they're trapped and they're all about to die. And then at the last second, right timing, but at the last second, God says, take your staff and, hit it to the ground. I don't remember exactly what he said to do. And then the Red Sea parted, and then they got to walk through. But man, leading up to that point,
Yeah.
yikes, right? Like,
Yeah.
it can be scary, but that's where it's important to have faith, to come with faith, because faith is what pleases God, right? And I think having faith unlocks God's ability to work in our lives. Like, he can't work with fear. Like, fear's not of God, right? So when we come with faith, it's almost like God's like up there, like, yes, like, send it, I think that's such a fun picture of what that relationship looks like, at least in my own life.
No, and I love that. I mean, you couldn't have imagined in a million years that you're waiting to meet your babies. Like, she's made it through the pregnancy, you're in the room, that happens. And I love that you guys turn to God immediately in those moments. And, here we are, incredible story. They're almost 2 years old. And I
I
love
know.
getting to talk to you about family and life because I think, it's the most important part, right? But we have some other things to talk about today. One of them
Sure.
is obviously music and then the show that you're guest starring in Live and Local. Let's
Yeah.
start first with Build a Boat because this is a really
Yeah.
catchy song. It's
Thank
powerful.
you.
What
Thanks.
what is the message behind this song? What do you want people to take away?
Yeah, I've already been diving into it a little bit, but it's about having faith, even in a dry season. You take the story of Noah. I think Hollywood gets this story wrong a lot of the times. There's this big back and forth between Noah and God of him saying he doesn't want to do it, and all this stuff. But the Bible depicts this story really simple. It says God asked Noah to build an ark, and Noah was obedient.
Yeah. Yeah.
That challenged the heck out of me. I don't know about you, but I'm like, dang, I don't know if the Bible would depict some of the crazy things God's asked me to do over the years as Colton was obedient. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there would be a few more things in between there.
A
So
little more
I just,
Jonah than Noah, maybe. A little more
yes,
for you
100%.
anyway.
So it challenged me to go, you know what? Like, even though, like, faith can look crazy sometimes, I think that there's a reward waiting on the other side of crazy faith. I think God is trying to get something to you. He's not just asking you to do it because he feels like it, right? He knows the plans he has for us, right? They're plans to prosper us, not to harm us, to give us a hope and a future. So knowing that and seeing God come through time and time again in my own life, it makes me more willing to go, you know what? My response is yes, let's do it. Like, even if I don't feel like it, even if I don't see it in the natural, that's where faith comes in. I'm going to step out, I'm going to have faith. And even if it means building a boat in this desert, right? That's what I'm going to do because you promised rain. So here we go. So that's what Build a Boat's all about. We're so excited about the song. It's so much fun to play. And yeah, it's
Yeah, I
awesome.
love that. Well, I love that too because I mean, look, we're living in a crazy culture, and chances are we're going to be asked to do more and more difficult things and to speak out in harder ways. And so I think keeping that message in mind is so important. I mean, Noah's building a boat in the middle of land, and people are probably thinking this guy's crazy. Like, what is he doing? And he's doing it's going on, and people are just like, wow, what a wild thing. And yet you see the purpose in it after, and that happens a lot in life. Like, I can't figure out why God's asking me to do something, and I see the purpose later. So love that, love the song. Now, Live and Local, you are no stranger to TV. Obviously, your roots actually came in TV on American Idol, but this show, obviously, it's a comedy, and you're guest starring in it. How did you get involved in this, and what made you say you wanted to do it?
So Live and Local was one of those opportunities that came up. Full disclosure, I had no idea what I was really even a part of. So I think it's an interview like any other interview, but then I'm looking at the notes and I'm going, wait, the guy who plays Uncle Joey from Full House is doing the interview? Well, that's pretty sweet. I'm like, maybe he's trying his hand at radio. This seems kind of weird. So I do the interview, and it was just like you and I talking right now, like really kind, and a couple other people as well. And the interview ended. It was, if you think I'm a great actor, it's because I wasn't acting. I did not know it was
You're
a
just being
TV show.
you. You're just being you.
I was just being me, and kudos to them because they were great actors as well. I had no idea that I was a part of this TV show where it's like it's fake basically. It's not a real radio station, but they bring on real guests to do interviews. So afterwards, it kind of clicked, and I'm like, wow, that makes so much more sense.
You were a guest star without knowing that you were a guest star. That's pretty cool.
1000%. I know, it's pretty funny. Kind of
That's
sad. I had a
amazing.
major blonde moment, I guess, but
It's pretty cool to be a part of it. It's unique, and obviously it's got a great cast. And then you're playing yourself in this. And so, have you gotten to see your episode yet?
man, I haven't watched it. I need to. I think it's out, so I'm excited to
Yes.
see it. I just haven't had time to jump on yet, but I've heard it's hilarious.
Well, I love it. Well, it is. It's very funny, and it's amazing how they filmed it and how you were kind of like interviewed as yourself. And
Yeah.
but when you look back, because I think it's interesting. You've had this amazing career, and it continues to be phenomenal. And you're touring, and you're doing fun projects like Live and Local. When you look back at this journey, and you go back to the beginning of it and where you are now, what has been really the most surprising thing to you, not only as a human being journeying through that, but specifically, as a Christian? What have you learned about your faith in your life through that?
Oh man.
It's a heavy question, I know.
Yeah. Man, I've learned a lot, especially just thinking about where it started, even before Idol, like leading worship for a youth group, and um, yeah, doing the time and working on a gift that I've been given in music, but knowing that it still had a long way to go for it to be something worth listening to, and um, yeah, like the thing that it shouldn't catch me by surprise, but it just kind of blows me away every time is God's faithfulness. And yeah, like I'm not perfect. I have shortcomings, and I know that looks different for different people, but the fact that God continues to use me kind of blows my mind. Like just because I might be up 5 or 6 feet on a stage or on a platform doesn't make me any more um, worthy of a calling like this. Um, it's just the path that God's laid out before me, and I'm so thankful that I get to do it. But it's wild. It just blows my mind, just the faithfulness of God, like every single time. And even a year like we had in 2020, or 2 years, Lord have mercy. Um,
it never ends. Yeah.
the never ending COVID story. Goodness. But even a year like that, where one of my primary sources of income was just halted in touring, um, learning like, okay, like God, I've known this my entire life, but now it's time. It's like, all right, it's where rubber meets the road. You're my provider. You're our provider as a family. Um, it's not in my job title or the amount of shows that we play in a year, or a hit song with royalties. It's none of that. It's you are our provider. So God, we're going to trust that you know what you're doing, and you're going to work all of this out for our good. And man, we watched as checks would come in that year, and songs that had already lived their life, right? It's like they had peaked and they were well on their way out, but for whatever reason, like radio stations, like, let's go back and play some of the early Colton Dixon, this month, or let's go back, and It's like, man, some of those royalty checks were some of the biggest I've ever had in my career, and like we didn't have a song that was doing what other songs had in the past. Miracles was just starting to ramp up for us, but it just kind of blew my mind, and I knew exactly where it came from. So again, whether that was, God going into the bank account and manipulating numbers, or whether he was like just
Working through people.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe putting me or a certain song on um, some people's hearts. I think that's so cool, like how he does that. Um, I'm excited to ask him like some of the certain situations in my life, like what did you do? Like just
Right.
tell me,
How did
like
that
what was it?
happen?
What
Yeah.
was the process? How did this happen? Like I almost feel like it's getting to hear how the magic trick is performed,
Yeah.
right? Like a magician never tells his secrets, of
Did
course,
you
but
use
hopefully he
people
lets me in.
to did what? Because there are things
Yeah,
like
like
that where you're like that was like a supernatural thing, and then there are other things where you're like I don't know, right? Like somebody was somewhere and they saved somebody's life, and you're like wow they were there, and how did they get? Like it's just there's so much in life, and I love that idea of being able to kind of ask those things. And
yeah,
what you just said though is really important because you have perspective, and every time I've ever talked to you, it's interesting because not everybody you speak with has that perspective. What you said about being 6 feet up, that doesn't give you any more of a, calling or a reason to be called than anybody else. I mean, these are things that are really hard to keep perspective on when you have lights on you and cameras on you and attention on you. And yet you seem to really have always been able to keep that perspective. Is that a challenge to keep at times?
yeah. It's a daily thing. Just had a conversation about this with someone else the other day. It's not a it's not a like you fix it once and then it never happens again. It's always there. Like every morning you have an opportunity to live for yourself or to live for God, and I that doesn't mean you're not going to have fun doing it, but there's definitely a process where you have to continue like keeping your flesh in line, and sometimes that means not believing the hype, right? Not just on the bad days, but even on the good days. Like when people are telling you the best thing since sliced bread, it's like that's very sweet, thank you. But knowing it's like, man, like I'm a flawed human being, and actually, like on my with my own two hands, on my own 2 feet, I deserve death. But I just serve a really gracious God. I learned just a few years ago, like it seems in this line of work, when you show up to a venue, most of the time the venue goes above and beyond to make sure the artist feels taken care of, and it feels like you're being served all day long, and it's really sweet. Like I'm thankful for those. It's nice, and a home cooked meal, thank you Jesus, is so good. But that can follow you on stage, and you can think, okay, cool, like I'm still being served, right? So you expect the audience to react a certain way, you expect them to clap, you expect them to sing along or whatever, and when they don't do those things, it can negatively impact how you're doing a show. And I realized, wow, like they're not here to serve me. It's actually the other way around. I'm here to serve them because God has given me these songs and given me these words or the story or whatever to share, like right, to prepare their heart for what He has tonight. So when that shifted for me, all of that other stuff kind of melted away. Like the how good a show wasn't dependent on how the audience responded, right? Because I knew I did everything that we were called to do, and then it was up to God and up to Holy Spirit to convict and to move, and um, it just really changed the game for me and my crew. And not saying every show is like that. I have some bad days, There,
Well, you're a human. You're a
I'm
human being,
human.
but you're
Yeah,
aware of it. You're aware of it, and you're talking about it. And I think that is the key, right? Is that awareness and that journey, and that you work toward that every day. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah. Thank
That
you.
is. Well, listen, it's incredible everything you have going on. The song is "Build a Boat." The show is live and local. It's over at Pure Flix. Colton, thanks for giving me time today.
Man, thank you so much. It was great to see you and to reconnect.